Joining us now is Adam Hardage, Special Operations Combat Veteran and former CIA Operations Officer. And we also have Geopolitical Strategist Darin Gaub. He's a retired lieutenant colonel who served in the U.S. Army as a Black Hawk helicopter pilot and battalion commander. First of all, good afternoon to you both. Thank you for joining us. Now, today, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth gave us a unique perspective of this war, and I have the clip here. Let's take a listen.
This was never meant to be a fair fight, and it is not a fair fight. We are punching them while they're down, which is exactly how it should be. Thus far, Operation Epic Fury has delivered twice the air power of shock and awe of Iraq in 2003, minus Paul Bremer and the nation building. The campaign has 7 times the intensity of Israel's previous operations against Iran during the 12-day war. 7 times.
So, Adam, twice the power as Iraq compared to Iraq, and then 7 times compared to the 12-day war, and, saying this is not a fair fight. Your reactions upon hearing this?
Yeah, well, I mean, what you're hearing is basically, a prize fighter kind of discussion. It's very much a departure from what you would see historically from diplomatic circles within the U.S. And I think this president and Secretary Hegseth are trying to send a very clear message to American enemies around the world that, the old school is gone and this is a very different way of doing business and that they are deadly serious about it. So, I mean, I figure, after what we've seen in Venezuela with Maduro and then Mexico with El Mencho and now Iran with the Ayatollahs, I think the world is sitting up and taking notice that this administration means very serious business and they intend to leverage American capabilities to achieve their desired end state and outcome, no matter what the cost.
So, Colonel, can I go to you now? What are you thinking after hearing the intensity that the U.S. military is bringing upon Iran?
Well, this is how it's supposed to be done. When you're going into combat, you're not supposed to want to engage in a fair fight. You're supposed to want to go in to win and win overwhelmingly because that saves your lives ultimately. It ends the battle faster because you overwhelm the enemy to the point where they capitulate a whole lot faster, or if they're not even there to capitulate, of course, then it's already over. You don't go into a fight sitting there hoping that it is somehow equal all the way to the end and that you just pull ahead right at the finish line. It's not how this is supposed to work. So from what I'm seeing and what I'm getting out of people in theater, this is exactly what we want to be able to see. You have to go into a place like Iran and overwhelm them very quickly because they have so many assets that if you let them, if you try to whittle them away slowly, it'll never work. And so I agree with the method. I think the language is correct.
But Adam, we have to talk about the Americans still in the Middle East who are at risk. The U.S. is facilitating charter flights from a number of countries for citizens. So Secretary of State official Dylan Johnston saying that since February 28th, over 17,000 American citizens have returned to the United States from the Middle East. Over 8,500 American citizens returning to the U.S. yesterday alone, and the job is not done yet. So on this, what are the risks that Americans are facing in the Middle East right now, Adam?
Sure. I would say probably the biggest risk is just, a casualty of being there, getting caught in the crossfire type thing. So you see this a lot. And frankly, there's been a lot of disruption to all the embassies across the region. So whether you're talking about Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Jordan, the list kind of goes on, and it's really become a situation where you have kind of multiple non-combatant evacuation operations on a small scale happening across the region. So there's obviously threats to U.S. service members, from remote attacks, especially nowadays. You've got drone warfare is becoming a major, probably the leading factor in battle. Drone warfare is very cheap. It's you kind of democratize lethality to the lowest common bidder, and I think we're seeing a lot of that play out, and I think that will just continue to rise. And I would also like to echo what the colonel said. I completely agree with him. if you're going to go into war, then it should be decisive, and it needs to be brutal. It needs to be swift. It should not be something where we get into these endless wars where we don't have any real clear objectives or desire to actually win. So I completely echo his sentiments.
Right, and the administration is saying that this operation is ahead of schedule a number of times now. So, Colonel Gaub, a similar question to you on this topic. You know, some are asking whether the administration did enough to get Americans out of the region before this operation. So, I mean, just your overall comments here. What is the usual protocol, and was it followed?
Well, I would say that the protocol largely looks like it has been followed to the best extent they can without risking operational security. Because let's just say you were to put out a warning that said, evacuate every embassy and everything by this time on this day. Well, that becomes something that gets picked up on very quickly and can be something that actually puts operations at risks. So, and also, by the way, Iran has expanded what they're doing beyond what some probably anticipated, and their willingness to launch missiles against targets all over the Middle East, out to Turkey, and potentially even going directly east towards, say a Pakistan or Afghanistan for their own reasons. And so you're dealing with an Iran that seems to be on its death rattle, and it's just lashing out at everybody, making more enemies. I think they're doing this right. Ultimately, there's always risk. There's no perfect way to do this, but they've made the assets available. They've advertised the phone numbers and made the systems there. And I can promise you, having used it, the system works. When you put your information in with the Secretary of State's office and say, I need help here, here's my contact, that works. I think you're going to see this play out relatively well, considering what I'm seeing now.
So, Adam, in addition to American citizens, there's also service members who are being impacted right now. Here's Hegseth earlier today talking about this.
Much was made of the volume of missiles Iran was able to shoot in the first few days. And sadly, as we projected, a few got through and killed 6 of our best, who will hopefully arrive home soon. We will avenge them, no doubt.
Adam, President Trump said a couple days ago casualties could rise. Your thoughts on this situation?
Yeah, I mean, it's the profession of arms, and that very well in times of conflict, you know, bullets go both ways, is the old adage. And you know, and I would say that, you know, for the people that are concerned about troops in harm's way, obviously we don't want Americans getting hurt. But at the same time, in order to achieve these objectives, I mean, there's a reason why the men and women put on the uniform, and when called to duty, they will go fulfill that duty. You know, as a veteran of 4 wars, you know, Iraq, Afghanistan, West Africa, and Jordan, Syria, it's you know, it's something that you do, and you certainly say your prayers and you get your mind right with yourself, your mission, and with God, and leave it up to the universe and go carry out your duties to the best of your ability.
And Colonel Gaub, anything you'd like to add to that?
Now, Adam's right. Ultimately, you put on the uniform, you raise your hand, you accept the risk. You know what could happen. You certainly pray that it doesn't. But I would remind people, too, that this is going to play especially hard in the state of Iowa, where they already lost members of their state in the attacks in Syria. And it sounds like Adam and I have gone over many of the same pieces of terrain. We know the risks in the Middle East in general and in combat specifically. So pray for the best, but do your duty and stay focused on that.
So, Adam, to your previous comment, I'd like to follow up on that because some U.S. lawmakers are calling this a war of choice by Trump. How do you respond to arguments that the U.S. shouldn't start conflicts such as this because it puts U.S. service members in danger?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the nature of the business. If you're going to go into the business of arms, then you have to be prepared to potentially, you know, pay the ultimate price for it. I'm not dismissing any concerns that people have. It's certainly being concerned and taking the best care that we can of our service members is this administration's priority and everything else. But to say that, you know, it's just a war of convenience or something that didn't need to be done is a little bit irresponsible, I would say. I think, you know, the president's been very clear about his objectives. I think he's also a brilliant tactician and strategist in the sense that he won't commit, you know, to these endless wars, and he won't put boots on the ground that don't need to be there or aren't going to be able to achieve a clear national objective. And so I support what the administration is doing. I hear a lot of people say, we're just doing Israel's bidding or whatnot. And I don't see that to be the case. In this case, I do believe, obviously, that we need to support our allies in the region and across the world. But at the end of the day, when, Iran has been negotiated with for 47 years and it hasn't worked. And so at some point, you have to take action. You telegraph that and let the world know that it was going to happen if they didn't come to the table. And they didn't. And now here we are.
So, Colonel, talk to us a bit more about the cost of lives here. What in your view, is the right balance in minimizing casualties and also achieving the mission objectives?
Well, that's a difficult one to answer because what you're trying to do is go in there with the expectation that you'd like to leave with no casualties whatsoever, but they're going to happen. So there's no numerical ratio you can put on something like this. You have to lay out your objectives and then you build a plan around the best possible scenario you can to maximize the chances of your people's survival. And that goes back to overwhelming force again. And that by doing that, you put your people in much less risk. And to that question again about is this a war of choice? I would tell you, the number already came up that Adam mentioned. Iran's been at war with us for 47 years. We just have forgotten that we were supposed to be really kind of fighting back instead of constantly taking the punches. We're punching back now, and casualties are to be expected. We certainly don't want any, but I guarantee you the fact that we're talking about no boots on the ground is indicative of the fact that we're not going to go in there with Army and Marine Corps units on the ground to try to do something in Iran. That right there reduces any chances reduces greatly the chance of casualties of any kind. And I think that's where it needs to stop is, we do not need to go into the ground in this country at all.
So Adam, respond to this. Some U.S. lawmakers are depicting service members as victims here, being put in harm's way against their will.
I would just say, that's just political theater, and frankly, it's also disrespectful. American servicemen and women sign up. They sign their name on the bottom line, and they understand that is an oath that is in blood potentially. That's why war is a young man or a young woman's game. And, because the older we get, the more we realize maybe we want to stick around for a little while longer once we have kids and stuff. But the courage that are exhibited by American armed forces are just frankly inspiring and awesome to see. And, I give kudos to the boys and girls that are out there today doing it. And I understand that, harm may come to you, but that's the risk we take. And so, you do the best you can. You reduce risk to mission, risk of force. You come up with the best plan you can. And then when it comes down to it, you got to execute. So the best thing that we could ask for, our lawmakers is for lawmakers to show a little gumption and support for the troops that are actually over there in harm's way doing their duty.
So Colonel Gaub, I started with Adam, so I want to end with you. How do we honor those who risk their lives in wars such as this? Hegseth today talked about avenging them. But in your view, how do we best honor these fallen U.S. service members?
Well, leave the vengeance mission to the military. We'll take care of our own. I promise you that. For everybody else out there who thinks they never know what to do or if they can do enough for the sake of what the military has done for this nation and for people around the world, I would tell you just to live an honorable, peaceful life that makes that sacrifice worth it. Be a husband or a father or a parent of any kind, mom, whatever that is, raise your kids well, be a good spouse or be a good child, whatever that is. If you lead an honorable life, you will have made their sacrifice worthy and that's all it takes.
Okay, terrific comments from both of you. Colonel Gaub, Adam, thank you so much for speaking with us.
Thanks,
Thank you. Appreciate your time.